I'm Angela Morabito with Campus Reform, and today I've got 5 big questions for Mr. Woody White, a member of the Board of Trustees at UNC Wilmington, who recently encountered a very difficult situation when a professor posted a threat on social media. Mr. White is here to discuss that situation and the role of trustees more broadly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Angela. It's nice to be with you.
So this situation you ran into, Campus Reform broke the story of a professor at your college who posted on Facebook, and this is a direct quote, "blow up Republicans." You took action on this, it set off a chain of events. Can you walk us through it?
Well, your report is what informed us of the posting. It occurred evidently on May 17. A student who I understand waited until she graduated to avoid any reprisals from anyone, blew the whistle on May 17 and notified some members of the administration, who then promptly failed, we understand, to notify the senior administration, who failed to notify the board. And so it took 5 or 6 weeks, thanks to the courage of that young lady and her mother and her support system. We found this out. And it was understandably taken down at some period in time. We don't have all the details on that, but you are well informed about sort of the wake that it has left and what we are trying to do about it.
This is remarkable. We're seeing boards of trustees like the one on which you serve starting to step up and flex some muscle at the colleges where they serve. But trustees are very poorly understood by the general public. We don't think of them generally as part of the college ecosystem. So how would you describe that role of a trustee? What is your mission at the university in terms of education and the student experience?
Well, North Carolina general statute sets forth the scheme that we are to follow, and the authority, which is very limited, that we're given. It's essentially architecture on campus, buildings and funding for campus buildings, and accepting positions and tenure and things like that. That's pretty much it. Other than that, we are an advisory board. And what does that mean? Well, it simply means that the chancellors of these universities run the campuses as much like a CEO as they're able to. Of course, butted up against the State Employees Personnel Act, which tends to protect people that maybe it shouldn't, the tenure that does the same thing. And so we are limited in what we can do. One trustee doesn't have power to do anything. Our board does have some power to suggest, try to influence, and try to convince the administration that, hey, we see a need here. We see some issues that you might want to focus on. And our chancellor, for the most part, is very responsive to those things. As you've seen recently in other campuses in North Carolina and around the country, that's not necessarily the case. And so I guess the conclusion, just to sum up that question, Angela, trustees are not kings. They don't have edicts they issue. They can't do an awful lot except try to be a voice and try to advocate and try to push for change where they recognize that it's needed.
And we saw another board of trustees push for change quite recently with the tenure dispute that was going on with Nikole Hannah-Jones, who we thought was going to go teach at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She was granted tenure and denied tenure, granted tenure again, and then decided to go teach at Howard University instead. This was a really hard fought decision, and much of it centered on her journalistic, well, I don't know if I would call it journalistic, but work that she is known for, the 1619 Project. There's so much controversy around this. Do you think the board made the right decision?
No. What that demonstrates to us, Angela, is the power of bullies in the woke movement. And it's nothing more than that. No one was being ugly or in any way discrediting what I guess she has as a career in wanting to teach at UNC-Chapel Hill, but it was a question of whether or not she was qualified and entitled to tenure. And that board at Chapel Hill, in my opinion, was bullied by the woke movement. And if you need further evidence of that, you simply look at the students that burst in on the closed meeting, which is statutorily required. It wasn't that they chose to have a closed meeting. The law requires them to do that. So they burst in shouting and screaming, doing what the woke movement tends to try to do, which is change public policy by threats, by the loudness of their protesting, by pulling things down and damaging property, instead of changing policy through the deliberative civil discourse that we typically reserve for legislative bodies. And so these students burst in, they intimidate these trustees. And I'll be honest with you, Angela, most trustees on these boards are people that don't like controversy. Nobody really likes controversy. I don't like it, but it's so necessary sometimes to effectuate change. And so you sit there sometimes with people on these boards that enjoy the free banquets and enjoy the basketball tickets and the goodies that come along supposedly with these positions. And that's all they're there for. And I don't know everyone on the Chapel Hill board, but I do know there are some of those people. And the folks making the decision to put these trustees on these boards need to have people that can independently think, that can critically analyze, and that have the courage to stand up and say what needs to be said when they know they need to say it, and not sit there in fear of bullies.
One of the biggest decisions that governors are being faced with right now is whether or not to ban critical race theory. Nikole Hannah-Jones almost brought critical race theory to UNC-Chapel Hill. It's present on virtually all college campuses, whether it's called by its official name or not. Have you seen critical race theory show up, and what would you say is the impact on students' free speech?
Well, it may not surprise your viewers to learn that this has been around for a while. This has been part of a systematic approach to indoctrinate and change through an elongated process how people think. We're not talking about neglecting history or ignoring parts of our history. We need to know all history. Nobody would disagree with that. But what is happening is, when we see public school teachers and public school curriculum start talking about this, elementary, middle, and high school, where do these teachers learn this? Is it a surprise to us that they're educated in public universities for the most part, that they are essentially bullied and told, and this is what you're going to teach? The school boards in local areas really don't get into that much. They should, they don't. They're fearful of engaging the public or doing those things. The university level boards of trustees, we can't regulate, nor should we regulate what is taught in the classroom. But we should make sure, as we said a moment ago, that everyone's free to exchange ideas and that we're not indoctrinating people. Now, every campus, in my view, should have a true progressive liberal professor or representation and a true conservative voice representation. I mean, that's the essence of liberal arts education, right? And then between those points, civil discourse and debate. Instead, we have a system of indoctrination. And you know what we do about it? We come on shows like this and we talk about it, we complain, and we try to talk to our legislators about it. Nothing changes. And it's because of the bully effect. It's because of people that run small businesses like me, or other people on the board that I serve on, that are fearful of, gosh, what are my neighbors going to say? Or somebody going to not go to my medical practice if I speak up? We've got to get past that. And all of this stuff is interwoven with each other, the cancel culture and the fear factor, the self-censorship. We do it, most of us, in our private lives as well. If you're at a dinner party, or if you're in your courthouse or in your hospital, you're careful of what you say. And it used to not be that way. You used to just not talk politics and religion at Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, but everybody talked about what was going on in the community square before now. They don't do that anymore. Why? I don't know. It's crazy.
I mean, you're right. And you raised a good point that debate isn't possible without both sides, that opposition and conflict aren't necessarily wrong. In fact, they can help people learn. So my last big question to you would be, what would your advice be to your peers, to people who serve on the board of trustees with you, and to trustees at other organizations? What would you say they need to be looking out for as they carry out their function in the university?
Don't be fearful. if you take the oath of office and you agree to sit in that chair, then do your duty. Speak out, advocate, don't fear consequence. Because if you are fearful and you do fear that consequence, you shouldn't be in that role. You're not upholding your oath of office. And that's true for politicians, for people in public office. And you know, many of them, a lot of them are outspoken, a lot of them are very principled people, but others just really enjoy the perks and they just want to get reelected and they just want to go through the motions. If you're going to serve that way, you're not fulfilling your oath. There's a reason why when you're a board of trustee member or you're a state senator or a county commissioner or a school board member, you put your hand on the Bible and you raise your right hand. And it's not only to uphold the laws of the state and the country, it's really to represent people and speak freely and be their voice and participate in the deliberative process. And if you don't want to do that, don't accept the position. And to those people making the decision to appoint, look for those people, not troublemakers, but reasonable people that can listen and discern and discriminate, think, and then decide and find consensus. That's how this country was made so successful. That's what got us where we are. That's how we overcame slavery. It's how we overcame gender discrimination and all of the other advancements that we have made. That's what we did. We're not doing that anymore. And what's the consequence of that? That's fearful and it's worrisome.
It's a wonderful message about the importance of having integrity and being willing to speak up when it's appropriate while still respecting academic freedom and freedom of speech. Mr. Woody White, thank you so much for joining us today and answering 5 big questions.
Thank you, Angela.